Have you ever noticed? Love doesn't usually end with a scream, a slammed door, or a tearful goodbye. Sometimes it ends with a sigh over dinner, a call that never gets returned, or a gaze that glides past you like you were never really there. Love doesn't leave with noise, it quietly slips away. And the most painful part? When someone starts falling out of love with you, they rarely say it. They show it. Have you ever noticed that love doesn't always end with a slammed door or a dramatic goodbye? More often, it fades in silence without a sound. Just a sigh over dinner, a phone call that goes unanswered, a glance that drifts right through you like you're invisible. Love rarely makes a grand exit. It quietly slips away. And when someone starts falling out of love with you, they don't always speak it. Instead, they show it. Bit by bit. Quietly, slowly, in ways that are easy to overlook, but impossible not to feel. And if you pay close attention, you'll see it. It almost always begins with two subtle shifts. When love begins to fade, the first signs aren't loud. There's no angry argument, no tearful confession. Just a gentle shift, so soft, so quiet, most people miss it until the damage is already done. What fades first is attention. And attention, as simple as it may sound, is the currency of all emotional connection. Where someone places their attention tells you what they value, what they care about, and where their emotional energy flows. In the early days of a relationship, attention is abundant, like sunshine on a spring morning. They listen to you talk about your day, even if it's boring. They read your facial expressions. They sense your mood before you say a word. They ask questions. They remember the small stuff. They are present not just hearing your words, but experiencing you. But when love begins to crack, attention is the first thing they begin to ration. And it doesn't disappear overnight. It fades like background music being turned down one notch at a time. They still respond to you, but differently. Their eyes wander while you speak. They still nod, still offer polite responses, but it's all surface level. The soul of the conversation is gone. There's a mechanical rhythm in their voice, like someone repeating lines in a play they've long grown tired of, and you feel it even if you can't quite explain it. The growing distance, the hesitation, the fading curiosity. This isn't just forgetfulness. It's not the kind of detachment that comes from a stressful day or being tired. No, it's a deeper kind of withdrawal. When someone no longer loves you, your inner world becomes less meaningful to them. They stop asking what you're thinking. They no longer check in on how you're really feeling, not like they used to. And that is only the beginning. Once attention starts to fade, what comes next? Let's gently turn the page and find out together in the next part. As we touched on in the previous part, when attention begins to fade, love starts slipping away quietly. But the silence doesn't just live in what they no longer hear, it lives in what they no longer feel. When you share your joy, it no longer lights them up the way it used to. When you speak your pain, it doesn't strike the same chord of urgency or concern. They may still respond out of habit or politeness, but that spark of emotional resonance is gone. It's as if they've stopped being a witness to your inner world. And that might be the most heartbreaking part of all. Because being truly seen, not just physically, but emotionally and psychologically, is a cornerstone of love. Love is more than being present in body. It's being emotionally tuned in, listening not just with ears, but with heart and presence. To be loved is to be gently held in someone's attention, even in small, seemingly insignificant ways. And when you lose that, you don't just feel lonely. You start to feel like you're fading into the background. And then the self-doubt creeps in. Am I being too sensitive, too needy, Too much? But deep down, your nervous system already knows the truth. It sends you quiet signals. A tightness in your chest when you speak and feel ignored. The aching loneliness of sitting next to someone and feeling oceans apart. Those feelings aren't irrational. They're emotional data, subtle messages your body is picking up before your mind can process. They haven't left you physically. They haven't made a grand announcement. But they've already begun checking out silently. And you can see it not just in what they still do, but in everything they no longer bother to do. They don't look at you with the same light in their eyes. They don't ask, "How are you?" and really want to know. They don't follow up on that story you were excited to share. They forget the little thing you told them last week that mattered deeply to you. Their attention is elsewhere. Sometimes it's on their phone. Sometimes lost in thought, but rarely on you. And that absence of attention, it doesn't cause an explosion. It causes erosion. A slow ache that wears you down over time. If you're not careful, you start to mirror it. You shrink. You speak less. You stop sharing. You learn to withhold your attention because offering it into silence hurts too much. This is the quiet beginning of emotional disconnection. The slow, silent vanishing of interest, curiosity, and care. And tragically, it often begins long before anyone says out loud that something is wrong. When someone starts falling out of love with you, one of the most profound and revealing signs is that they begin to slowly erase you from their internal narrative. Not all at once, but gradually. It begins deep in the hidden corners of their mind in spaces you can't see. When love is new, people naturally start to imagine a future that includes the other person. Whether consciously or not, they begin building a shared vision where you'll live, how your lives will intertwine, what holidays will look like, how you'll face hardships together. You become part of their long-term blueprint. Decisions are no longer theirs alone. You are part of a shared design. You're not just in their present, you've taken root in their sense of what's next. But when love begins to fade, they start dismantling that blueprint quietly. And you begin to disappear from their instinctive planning like a figure gently erased from a dream they no longer feel connected to. So what happens next once you vanish from their future vision? Let's turn the page and move gently into the next part of the story. After they begin quietly removing you from their internal future, the next shift happens not in words, but in the silence that fills their plans. They don't sit you down and make a big announcement. They don't say, "You're no longer part of my future." It's far more subtle than that. You begin to notice little things. When they speak about the months or years ahead, the word "we" quietly disappears, replaced by "I." They start making plans without checking in with you. Conversations about dreams or shared goals start to feel hollow, unanchored, evasive even. And when you bring up the future, not demandingly, just gently they deflect. They change the subject. Or worse, they react as if you're pressuring them, even when all you're doing is hoping to be included. What's really happening? In their mind, they've already begun the process of psychological separation. And the hardest part is, this shift often goes unnoticed because they're still there, still showing up, still saying some of the right things, still going through the motions. But underneath the surface, the emotional current has changed. Their presence begins to feel thinner. You can sense it in their lack of enthusiasm, the blank expressions when you talk about anything long-term. It's like they've closed a door halfway and you're standing outside of it, unsure whether they'll open it or close it completely. The truth is, they may not even realize they're doing this. Sometimes it's a subconscious form of self-protection. They might be feeling dissatisfied, or struggling with internal conflict they haven't figured out how to express. Rather than face those feelings head on, they begin retreating inward. They start rewriting their internal script, one where you slowly fade from the central story. This mental rewrite makes it easier for them to justify the growing emotional distance. It's a way of making their quiet detachment feel logical before they ever say a word out loud. And so, in their mind, you're no longer the main character. You become a background presence. A side note, a supporting role in a life that you once imagined building together. But since all of this starts inside, you're left feeling off balance, out of sync. You feel something is different, but when you ask, the answers are vague. Or worse, defensive. It's an incredibly lonely place to be. Still devoted. Still picturing a life together, while they've quietly begun stepping away from that shared dream. The most painful part isn't always being left out of the plan. It's realizing that the version of the relationship you thought was real is no longer mutual. You're still holding on to plans, hopes, directions that once felt like they belonged to both of you. But now, your dreams are met with silence. Your plans are brushed aside with hesitation. The rituals of being together continue, the routines, the habits, but the soul of it is missing. The mutual dreaming, the shared creation of a future, that part is gone. And that leaves you trapped in emotional limbo, tethered to someone who may still sit beside you, sleep next to you, go through each day with you, but who has already started walking away mentally and emotionally. And in this quiet unraveling, there's one more behavior, subtle but deeply corrosive, that often reveals love is slipping away. Let's step into that next layer together. After they begin rewriting the future without you, the next erosion of love comes in even quieter ways, in the tiniest moments that feel small but cut deep. These are what we might call micro-dismissals. Not dramatic outbursts. Not cruel words shouted in anger. No, these are much more discreet, so subtle you may not even notice them at first. But over time, they build up. Like rust gathering silently on a car's frame, they begin to eat away at the structure of your relationship. These small dismissals chip at the core of mutual respect and rob the relationship of emotional safety. It's in the little things. A shift in tone, a blank look, a delayed response, a passive gesture. Each one delivering a quiet, unspoken message: you don't matter as much as you used to. At first, it might seem harmless. Maybe you share something you're excited about, a new idea, a dream, a thought that lights you up. But instead of meeting your joy with interest or encouragement, they respond with a flat or worse, a sarcastic quip. What once might have sparked laughter or a meaningful discussion is now met with silence, a shrug, disinterest. The words may not be cruel, but the energy behind them speaks volumes. It's not disagreement, it's detachment. They simply don't care enough anymore to engage. And without validation, your voice in the relationship begins to feel smaller. Your sense of being seen, of being valued, starts to fray. You might begin to notice that your jokes no longer land. Where they once laughed without effort, now they barely smile or give you that condescending half smirk that makes you question whether you even said something funny at all. Each instance feels minor on its own, easy to brush off. Maybe they're tired. Maybe they've had a rough day. You try to be understanding, but the weight of those moments starts to add up. It's in how they interrupt you more often, or talk over you, in the way they seem not to hear what you say, even if you've said it more than once, in the way they forget things that matter to you, the way your emotions are met not with empathy, but with impatience. Or worse, they're brushed off like overreactions. These aren't loud forms of neglect, but they are corrosive. And what makes them so difficult to confront is that they're just quiet enough for you to doubt yourself. They're not shouting. They're not slamming doors or walking out. No, they're just closing the emotional door one tiny moment at a time. A blank stare. A half-hearted comment. An important detail ignored. Each action says the same thing. I no longer feel what I used to feel for you. What truly stings isn't just the behavior itself, but what it represents. A withdrawal of empathy. A thinning thread of emotional connection. A subtle declaration that care has left the room. And one of the clearest forms these micro-dismissals take is how they react when you're vulnerable. When you open up, when you finally say, "This hurt me," or "I need something from you," and instead of meeting you with softness or presence, they sigh or roll their eyes. Not dramatically, just enough for you to feel it in your bones. They've already emotionally checked out. So what happens when your vulnerability is no longer welcomed but quietly shamed? In the next part, we'll explore how this emotional distancing deepens and what it does to your sense of self. As we saw in the last part, micro-dismissals don't scream, they whisper. But what they whisper, over time, teaches you one dangerous lesson, that your emotions are too much. You begin to sense it every time you try to bring something up. Your needs, your feelings, the things that once sparked closeness now seem to weigh down the conversation. Suddenly, you feel like your emotional world has become an inconvenience, a burden. That's the insidious nature of micro-dismissals. They don't just sting, they train you. They condition you to shrink, to express less, to second-guess every emotion before it reaches your lips. You start editing yourself. You rehearse conversations in your head before speaking. And eventually, without even realizing it, you stop sharing altogether. Not because you don't feel anymore, but because you've learned to expect indifference. And what's truly alarming? How normal this can all start to feel if you're not paying attention. The human mind is remarkably good at adapting, even to emotional starvation. You begin to rationalize the void. Maybe this is just how love matures. Maybe all relationships eventually lose their spark. Maybe I'm just too sensitive. But deep down, in the quiet parts of you, you know. You feel it. Not in the blow-ups, but in the emptiness where closeness used to live. You see it in the shrug when you reach out. In the pause before they answer. In the missing warmth that used to live in their voice. These aren't just moments. They are messages, signs of a deeper truth. They're no longer reaching for you. And what hurts even more, they don't seem to care that you've noticed. When someone starts falling out of love, one of the clearest and most painful signs is the slow disappearance of intimacy. And not just physical intimacy, though, that's often part of it, but the emotional intimacy that breathes life into real connection. In the beginning, intimacy flows like a river. There's a hunger to know, to explore, to be known, to dive into each other's inner worlds without fear. Vulnerability doesn't feel scary, it feels exciting. You talk for hours about everything and nothing. Fears, childhood memories, hopes you've never spoken aloud before, even the random thoughts that would seem strange to others, to feel welcome with them. That's emotional nakedness. And when love is alive, being understood feels just as vital as being loved. But when love begins to fade, intimacy starts to dry up slowly, quietly. It begins with small changes. They stop asking the deeper questions. The long, winding conversations turn into brief, surface-level exchanges. You ask how their day was. They say, fine. You try to open up. They seem distracted, disinterested. They stop offering pieces of themselves voluntarily. They don't talk to you about their stress, their doubts, or the battles they're fighting internally. Instead, they turn inward. And the emotional bridge that once connected your souls, it starts to fray, strand by strand. Eventually, it feels like you both live on separate islands, still in the same room, but worlds apart inside. And soon, the emotional withdrawal spills over into the physical. Touch becomes less frequent. Affection feels rehearsed. Intimacy isn't gone, but it's different. Sometimes it feels like a routine. Something done out of obligation, not passion. A habit, not a connection. The little gestures that once came so naturally begin to disappear too. So what happens when even the physical signs of love start to fade? In the next part, we'll explore how the body reflects what the heart can no longer hide. As emotional and physical intimacy begin to fade, the body starts to speak in silence, and that silence says more than words ever could. The little gestures that once spoke volumes, a hand reaching for yours, a casual touch on your back as they walk by, a spontaneous lean-in just to be close. They start to disappear first. What used to feel natural and full of affection now feels rehearsed, or worse, avoided. You notice the way they lean away instead of into you. You sense the space after a kiss, not just physical, but emotional. They go to bed earlier. They sleep farther away. Not always by much, but enough for you to feel it. These moments don't always come from cruelty. Often, they're quiet signs, signals of emotional dissonance, proof that the warmth is no longer where it once lived. But perhaps the hardest part isn't just the missing physical connection. It's the growing ache that your inner world, your thoughts, your heart, your stories, is no longer a place they want to visit. You stop sharing the random thoughts that once made them laugh. The memories you used to reminisce over together now feel like dead weight. The dreams you once painted together hang in the air, untouched, unacknowledged. You begin to pause before you speak, not because you don't know what to say, but because you're unsure if they even care to hear it. You measure your words more carefully now. You censor your truth. Why? Because somewhere along the way, their reactions became colder, more dismissive, harder to predict. And when you finally do take the risk of opening up, their response feels flat, distracted, disinterested. And that's when it hits you, you're alone. Not physically, but emotionally. You might still share dinner, still go over bills and to-do lists, still talk logistics and weekend plans, but the connection is gone. It's all motion, no meaning. It's as if the soul of the relationship has packed its bags and quietly slipped out the back door. The lights are on, but no one's home. You're not really with each other anymore, just living alongside one another. And this loss of intimacy, it doesn't always come from a lack of love. Sometimes, people retreat into themselves because they're in pain. They're lost. They're confused. They're dissatisfied with life, maybe even with themselves. But when love is still alive, people reach for each other, even through the pain, especially through the pain. When love begins to die, that reaching stops. The silence stretches. The distance grows. And the unbearable new normal becomes this: feeling emotionally invisible even when someone is sitting right next to you. One of the clearest signs of this emotional fading happens in the most subtle of places, the routines. What once felt intentional, charged with affection and shared meaning, now feels mechanical. The rhythm continues. Dinner is still cooked. Texts are still sent. Tasks still get done. but the spirit behind it all is gone. What was once driven by love, passion, and care is now done out of obligation, or worse, pure indifference. And so we ask, when daily routines become hollow repetitions, what else starts to break down? In the next part, we'll explore the final signs that love has quietly left the room and how to recognize them before you lose yourself too. When daily routines become mechanical, the relationship begins to drift, not with a storm, but with a silent tide. In the early stages of love, routine isn't a burden. It's a form of intimacy, a love language in action. Making coffee in the morning and remembering exactly how they like it. Bringing home their favorite snack from the store without being asked. Washing the dishes while they unwind after a long day. These small gestures aren't just about practicality. They're infused with care, intention, and presence. They say, I notice you, I remember you, I care for you. Even the most mundane parts of life, laundry, groceries, taking out the trash feel lighter, more connected, because they're shared. And when done with love, the ordinary becomes sacred. But when love begins to fade, those same routines start to lose their soul. The warmth behind the gestures cools. The morning smile that used to accompany a cheerful good morning disappears. The text that once read, "Can't wait to see you," is reduced to a flat, "I'll be home at 6. Conversations begin to revolve solely around logistics, schedules, chores, to-do lists, responsibilities. The emotional fabric is stripped away. What once felt personal now feels procedural. The gestures are still there, but the presence, the heart behind them is missing. And suddenly, you start to notice. Time together doesn't feel cherished. It feels obligatory. As if they show up not because they want to, but because they're supposed to. There's a difference between choosing to be with someone and simply not leaving. You can feel that difference in the energy between you. Date nights grow repetitive or quietly disappear. Special occasions lose their spark. The excitement, the surprise, the careful thought that once made these moments meaningful gradually vanishes. What's left feels performative. You're going through the motions of a relationship instead of living in one. Even the emotional atmosphere changes. Laughter becomes rare. Spontaneity fades. Everything begins to feel muted. Like life has shifted from color to grayscale. You sit next to them, but feel far away. And the hardest part? You start questioning yourself. Have I changed? Am I asking for too much? But the truth is, this isn't about demanding more. It's about realizing that what was once given freely affection, energy, warmth, is now offered out of obligation, or withheld altogether. This mechanical rhythm, being together without actually connecting, is one of the most painful forms of emotional disconnection, because it doesn't come with drama. No raised voices, no packed bags, no slammed doors. Instead, it hides behind consistency, behind the illusion that everything is fine, just because the routines are still happening. But beneath the surface, the foundation is quietly weakening. The relationship has stopped evolving. It's no longer a shared journey forward. It's just a loop. A repetition of yesterday, instead of a co-creation of tomorrow. And the hardest part of all, it's not always easy to confront this shift, especially when everything on the outside still looks intact. In the next part, we'll explore why this illusion of everything's okay can be so misleading and so hard to break free from. When love becomes a routine without heart, it's easy to confuse proximity with presence, but your soul always knows the difference. From the outside, everything may appear intact. You still share space, meals, maybe even a bed. But presence doesn't always mean participation. And slowly, painfully, you begin to feel it. You speak, but their eyes glaze over. The connection that once felt effortless now feels strained, even forced. Moments that were once electric now land flat. Time together becomes just that, time together. Not closeness, not bonding, just coexisting. It's not that they've deliberately taken their love away. It's that they've stopped investing in it. And without emotional investment, without energy, intention, care, even the most stable routines start to feel like a slow, quiet starvation of the soul. Then comes a subtle shift. When someone starts to fall out of love, it's not just their behavior that changes. It's how they interpret you. Your words. Your silence. Your very presence. In the early stages of love, we offer each other grace. We choose to see the best. If you're late, it's because you were busy. If you're quiet, maybe you're just tired. If you forget something, it's no big deal. Love creates space for imperfection. But when love begins to fade, that grace erodes. The filter changes. Now, the same lateness feels like disrespect. The same quiet becomes emotional distance. The same mistake suddenly means something. Something wrong with you. Something broken in the relationship. What changed? Not necessarily your actions, but their perception of those actions. And in relationships, perception is everything. Where once there was empathy, there's now suspicion. Where once there was patience, now there's a quiet judgment. Your needs once met with love now sound like demands. Your emotions are minimized, brushed off. You're told you're too sensitive, too dramatic, too much. That listening ear that used to hold your feelings so gently, now it's impatient, restless, annoyed. The space where you once felt safe to open up, to be vulnerable, honest, raw, begins to close. And when you do express something real, something hard to say, it's no longer seen as brave. It's seen as a burden. This shift doesn't just hurt. It leaves you in a fog of emotional confusion. You start to wonder, am I the problem? So, you shrink. You second guess yourself. You walk on eggshells around your own truth just to avoid that sigh, that cold stare, that dismissive tone. And accompanying that shift in perception comes something even heavier, subtle blame. They may not say it directly, but it's there, in the way they sigh, in the way their body turns away from yours, in the long silences, in how they avoid eye contact. They begin to act as if the cracks in the relationship are your fault. And so, when blame is implied without words and perception becomes distorted by distance, what comes next? In the next part, we'll explore how this emotional misalignment quietly reshapes the entire dynamic until you no longer recognize yourself in the relationship. When blame becomes one-sided, when perception turns cold, the story of love starts quietly rewriting itself with you cast in the wrong role. Over time, it no longer feels like you're in a partnership. It feels like you're being put on trial. Suddenly, every issue becomes a reflection of your flaws. They take less and less accountability for their own behavior and turn more of their attention to yours. Conversations start sounding like accusations. Tension? That must be because of something you said. Distance? Clearly, you're being too much. Or maybe not enough. And just like that, the ground beneath you no longer feels steady. There's no balance, no mutual effort, only a constant sense that you are the problem. You find yourself shrinking, twisting, contorting, trying to prove you're still worthy. You try harder. You speak softer. You apologize more. You hope that maybe if you just say the right thing, do the right thing, be the right version of yourself, the warmth will return. But most of the time, it doesn't. Because the issue was never your words. It wasn't your tone or your timing. The issue is that their heart, the very place where love once lived, has already begun to close its doors. And once someone starts filtering everything you do through the lens of emotional detachment, even your most sincere intentions can feel like offenses. It doesn't matter what you meant. They're no longer seeing you through love. They're seeing you through distance. That shift hurts in a way words can't quite capture, because you're still there, still showing up, still trying, still hoping. But now, you're doing it in a space that feels like it's pushing you out. And love simply cannot survive in an atmosphere like that, where one person is still trying to connect, while the other is already halfway out the door, rewriting the story as they prepare to exit. When perception turns against you, love doesn't collapse in a single moment. It crumbles slowly, not from a dramatic betrayal, but from 1,000 tiny misreadings, 1,000 unspoken disappointments that together reshape who you are in their eyes. And when love begins to leave, it doesn't slam the door. It whispers. It shows up in the pauses that never used to be there, in the eyes that no longer light up when they see you, in the affection that's replaced with cold silence, in the conversations that used to mean everything, now reduced to fragments. And the most painful part? It's not always the end itself. It's the slow erosion that happens while you're still holding on. It's the silence that once felt comforting, now feeling cold. It's the routines that used to anchor you, now feeling like obligation. The signs are always there. The withdrawal of presence, the subtle dismissals, the intimacy that fades, the tone that turns sharp, the gaze that no longer sees you the same. And the tragedy? By the time you finally recognize them, a part of you has already begun to doubt yourself. But here's the truth your heart needs to remember. You are not hard to love. You are not too much. You are not broken. What you're witnessing is someone else's heart changing shape. And that shift, however painful, is not your failure. Your strength doesn't lie in forcing them to stay. It lies in seeing clearly what's happening and choosing to honor yourself anyway. Because real love leans in. It stays curious. It fights to understand. It doesn't flinch in the face of your truth. And when that's no longer present, what you're left with isn't love. It's the echo of it. So what do you do when you're left with that echo? In the final part, we'll explore the courage it takes to let go and what healing can look like on the other side of goodbye.